Thank you.
And this is my first day here, but what an incredible venue. For those of you who don't know, it was first conceived 20 years ago while Mike Bloomberg was the mayor of New York. He's now the chairman of PAC, as it's known among his friends. And for me, this is a really special evening because I got to know Jada in a small group that Sheryl Sandberg started, a lean circle.
Yes.
And so I got to know the raw, vulnerable, wise, funny Jada that you're going to get to know. So is that, as you can see, it's marked with posters, the whole thing. And every chapter ends with a question.
Yeah.
A question for the reader. And I want to maybe start with the first question and then ask you a few of these questions that you're asking the reader. So the first question is, can you find the moment when you began to reject the precious child within you?
Oh, man. Damn, Ariana, you gonna make me cry right from the gate. Yeah. I think I don't remember the moment, but I do remember moments of not feeling safe enough to be a child, you know? So whether it was in my grandmother's house, Shirley, who was a beautiful woman, but she was an alcoholic, you know? And she would have these alcoholic fits, like her talking to herself downstairs in these like really loud, rambunctious, just aggressive. And I remember being upstairs and just closing the door and just kind of hiding in the room just to stay out of her way and just not feeling safe, you know? And realizing that I wasn't allowed, I didn't have permission to be a child in so many spaces with adults. My mother also was an addict, and as well as my father, so I was around a lot of, I didn't have that safety, so, but it just got to the point where I was just like, I'm on my own. I gotta do this. And I think another pivotal moment was when my father said at 7 years old, he's like, I can't be your father. I'm a criminal, I'm an addict, I can't be your father. And I was like, cool, got it. You know, so it started very early.
And you write in the book how of you and the journey from feeling unlovable by your parents, which is stunning, and to finding the love in yourself.
Absolutely, and it's been a hell of a journey. You know what I mean? And I think we all take it, you know, for different reasons, different ways, but I think it's a journey we all take.
And for those of you wondering if Jada Holly's Love, the Holly Lessons.
Yes.
And it's page 386. But I highly, highly recommend that you don't jump to it, because if you read it in order, it will make a lot more sense than it made that night.
Yeah.
So, some of the other questions in the book, we'll do a quick lightning round.
Okay.
You say
always love somewhere, you know, and I think we always have to just focus on the pain and the trauma. And when I really did that exercise for myself, I was like, wow, you really did have a lot of love around you as well, you know? And then I started focusing more on that aspect than giving so much attention to what wasn't there, what wasn't healthy, you know? Yeah.
it's really that combination throughout the book of urging all of us, the way you did, to acknowledge the pain, not to do a kind of spiritual bypass.
Right.
But but then to transcend it.
That's right.
And so another question you ask the reader is, are there any losses in your life that you have not given yourself permission to mourn?
Yeah. Damn, Ariana. They're bringing a box of tissues out here. Yeah, I'm still learning how to grieve. I've had so much loss. I think many of us have. And I think so many of us feel as though we don't have permission to grieve. We just gotta keep it moving. That was my motto. Keep it moving. If you feel like you don't feel like you can stop and take a moment and feel the loss because you feel it will swallow you and you won't come back, because we relate, I did at least, I won't say we, I related to vulnerability as weakness, right? So where I grew up, if you're weak, that could get you killed, that could get you, you can become prey, a victim. And so I did everything in my power not to be weak. So if I was hurt, keep it moving. So that I could always have this shield of strength, this wall of strength. So nobody would mess with me, I didn't get slowed down, and nobody saw weakness.
So from the beginning, when you decided to write Worthy, there was that desire to have an instructional part to it.
Yeah.
So that others, you call them, could find some breadcrumbs.
Yeah, breadcrumbs. They're like little guidance pages now that I call them, yeah.
And that was something that started with your own children?
Yeah, and I think also it was kind of like a fantasy. I wanted, like when I read other people's memoirs, I'm like, okay, I get it. You went from this to that, but how? How did you get there? I don't want to just hear that, I went through 10 surgeries and then, I started to walk again. It's like, nah, I want to know the process, And so that was just kind of my fantasy of what I wish all memoirs were.
And also throughout the book, you talk about your own voices of doubt and self-judgment.
Yeah.
Actually, one of my favorite lines in the book is that when you get rid of your self-judgments, other people's judgments don't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I call that voice in my head the obnoxious roommate living in my head that judges me and puts me down. So how is your obnoxious roommate doing? Is she?
She's doing pretty
gone?
good. Yeah. No, I won't say she's gone. Right?
She makes guest appearances?
Yeah, she makes guest appearances all the time. We have a little conversation. We go, what's up? What's going on there? Yeah.
But she doesn't have the power she used to have.
She doesn't have the power she used to have, not at all.
And this is kind of one of Worthy's big ideas, right? How can you transcend these voices?
That's right. We have to transcend those voices, because that is the weapon within us that people can use against us. When people have judgment, what I learned to do, I had to ask myself, I'm like, do you believe that? Because if you didn't believe it, it wouldn't bother you. So let's look at that. What is it that person said that you believe that's upsetting you so much? Do you think you don't look good in that green dress? I look in the mirror and go, no, I think I look great in the green dress. Then what's the problem?
And you did look great in that green dress.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, the green dress. I didn't even put two and two together. But there was actually a green dress. Yeah.
That's my job. Put two and two together. But I'm also actually, since we are talking about the green dress, And Will has been a big part of your interviews in the last couple of days. You had an amazing interview on the Today Show today, when you said that maybe your relationship is getting stronger than ever. So you tell the world in the book that you actually separated in 2016, but that you have this deep, lifelong relationship, and you try to
Get away.
really get away,
I
but
did.
you haven't been able to do it.
Not gonna happen.
And I love your slogan, we ride together, we die together, bad marriage for life. So it seems to me that you haven't so much failed at marriage, but failed at separation.
Yeah.
And is there anything you want to announce tonight? Like, I mean, this is a very intimate audience, you know, we can all keep it quiet, right?
Well, you know, it's so funny. It's such a complicated, well, it's actually not complicated, but I can see how it would be complicated for others. You know, Will and I have gone through such an intense journey together to really learn what love is about, you know? And that's what being in relationships is about. Learning how to love. We think we come into relationships knowing how to love, you know, like, oh, I found my Prince Charming, he knows how to love me, he gonna make sure I'm happy. And, you know, as you go on in life, in marriage, in your partnerships, for me personally, I had to realize it wasn't Will's job to make me happy, right? And I had gone into my marriage really not in a great place. Like I talk about in the book, I had just had this nervous breakdown. Will comes along a year later, and I'm feeling so good. I'm like, I'm cured. I'm cured. I don't need to go to therapy. I don't need this Prozac. I found my new Prozac, and his name is Will Smith. You know? And so I had this false idea that Will was supposed to make me happy. And I lived with that for a long time, and I would get so disappointed when he didn't. And I had no self-responsibility. I wasn't taking care of myself in the way that I needed to. And so in 2016, we both were exhausted, pulling at each other, power struggles. And I had to go and really learn how to love myself before I could even identify what love looked like coming from somebody else. And now I'm in a place where I've done so much work on myself. I have this safe place right here with me. I found this safe oasis within myself. I'm safe. I'm safe enough to love myself. I'm safe enough to be my own mother, my own father, my own best friend. And whatever anybody else has to offer me is a gift. I'm not entitled. And I had to really learn that about Will. I wasn't entitled to him, right? And so now we're in this beautiful place. And so he's been on his journey too, because it's not just me. I wasn't the only one that needed to do work. You know? But I can only talk about my journey, and so we've been willing to do work together. After the Oscars, that's when we did some really deep work together. And when I was sitting at the Oscars, it clicked in. As soon as I was like, oh snap, you hit Chris? I was like, I'm riding with you. I didn't come into this place as your wife, but I'm leaving here as your wife because we got a storm we're gonna have to deal with together. I am not gonna leave your side. You know? And I just knew, I said, I am not gonna be able to get away from this dude. I really love him. And that was the moment. It was like an emotional crisis. It took an emotional crisis for me to really see, like, yo, we in this for this lifetime. So that's where we are.
Yes, and you also said how for everybody, not just you, it crushed the romantic idea, that's how you say it, that if we achieve enough, we are exempt from our shadow.
Yeah.
And even from the time you met with, you said he was so cheerful.
Yeah.
And you even thought, well, maybe that's not the guy for me, because if he's so cheerful, he can't be really deep.
Yeah.
And you wanted deep.
I wanted deep and troubled. You know, you always think the troubled guy is the deep guy. Yeah.
But recognizing that we all have a shadow.
Absolutely.
Whatever the cheerful outside may look like.
Absolutely.
And so that night, you recognized two things. One was that even though your love language is being the protector, even though that's your love language, you said it wasn't my place to try to steer that ship. Yeah. I knew that I would be by his side, but that I couldn't do the work for him. Mm-hmm. That was the first time I realized that. Because my codependency wanted to do the work for him. Mm-hmm. You know, so, but I was like, but I'm gonna be here. You know, but you're gonna have to do this. Yeah. And the other line I loved, you see the book is full of amazing lines, is that the way out is the way through. You had to go through everything. I had to go through everything, and that's one of the reasons for me. I'm so glad that I didn't go on that angry impulse of just like, I'm divorcing you, I'm sick of you, you know? I knew I had to get my stuff together. I recognized that, and I had to get through my stuff before I could see what was actually happening, right? And then being willing to work with Will in a different way. So now that we've done work together, now we're getting through on the other side, right? And it's like ceremony, which I talk about in the book, ayahuasca. Having to sit there in your stuff. You can't stop the process, right? It's the same thing in relationships. We try to stop the process of like working through it. We try to escape it and go, well, I'm gonna go find somebody else. Well, I'm gonna leave you. I'm gonna do. And sometimes we have to do that. Sometimes that's necessary. In my case, I had to work through my stuff with Will, and now we're coming out on the other side. And you know what is interesting about that night and other moments in your life that's a lesson for all of us? You said that we all of us have chapters in our lives we wish we could erase. Yeah. Right? Anybody here who doesn't have anything you want to erase? We'd love to meet you afterwards. Yet, you write, those are chapters in which we slayed our most menacing dragons. Yeah. So the very chapters that we may be ashamed of, that are the most troubling, are often the ones that help us get to the deepest places in us. Absolutely, those are the ones that we can't run away from. We have to go through, right? Because that's where we find those gems that we put on our golden crowns that make us the kings and queens we are. And the heroines of our own lives. Right. You write that, and it reminded me of my favorite Nora Ephron line. Remember, you are the heroine of your life, not the victim. There you go. All day. So you write about the disconnect between what the world saw as your perfect life and how you are really feeling.
Yeah.
Do you think that also has something to do with our culture's kind of broken definition of success, that we define success as money, fame,
Yeah.
but in your journey, you actually realize that's not how to define success, let alone fulfillment. So how would you define it now?
For me, it's loving connection. It's having a beautiful, intimate relationship with myself that allows me to have beautiful, intimate relationships with others. I love feeling connected. You know, it is my favorite thing. Even people that I got to meet today, looking you in your eyes, hugging you, looking at the beauty, taking pictures, even if it's just for a second. That to me is life, right? And so the disconnect was that I was disconnected with myself. And that's the part I didn't know that I had to learn to do. But that's success to me.
You're much closer to it now than you've ever been.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, much closer.
And part of that, as we see in the spiritual chapters, feeling the rain and surrender, had to do with the spiritual journey you're on. And one of the spiritual teachers was Radhanath Swami,
Yeah.
who introduced you to the wisdom of every major spiritual tradition, the New Testament, the Old Testament, the Quran, Sufism, everything. But in practical terms, he helped you with what is probably the hardest thing for all of us, and that's forgiveness.
Yeah. Ooh, he got me all the way together on that. Yeah. He got me all the way together.
So how is that going now? Anybody left for you to forgive?
Heck yeah! I got it, yeah. But you know what I realized about forgiveness? It was about me learning how to forgive myself. And that's what he got me all the way together on that. He was like, you have to worry about your relationship to you and your higher power. He was like, when you forgive yourself, you will see that the only thing to do is to forgive others. Like when I was able to go into the shadows of my own heart and my own soul and recognize when I was sitting in those shadows, and even when I hurt people when I was in those shadows, it wasn't personal. It had nothing to do with that other person. It had everything to do with me and how I felt about myself. And then I realized, wow, when that person hurt me, was it the same thing? I was like, oh, it's not personal. That's because that person doesn't have a great relationship with themselves. And I just happen to be there. Oh, you're forgiven. Because I forgive myself.
I
Yeah.
love that. And he also said to you that you don't have to go to a cave in Tibet
No.
to find spiritual awareness. You can find it in Hollywood. You can even find it playing golf. I love that scene where Tiger Woods is teaching you golf.
Yeah.
Of course, you would have Tiger Woods teaching you golf. And the lesson that you got, which was that you just have to be present and play one shot at a
time. That's how you gotta play life.
And I love that because we all have that part of our brain that either judges our past or worries about the future. And if we could only learn to be here, present, one shot at a time.
Right.
I have a favorite quote on my desk by Montaigne, you know, the French philosopher who said,
Yeah.
there were many terrible things in my life, but most of them never happened.
Right. Yep.
Which is the opposite of one shot at a time, right here, right now. And part of the spiritual odyssey took you to Vietnam.
Yeah.
where you actually met with Thich Nhat Hanh.
I met Thich Nhat Hanh. Yeah, he was ill. He wasn't in good shape, but I was allowed to see him and be in his presence, and it was a fluke. I went all the way to Vietnam by myself and just happened to get a chance to meet Thich Nhat Hanh, which was like he had been my spiritual mentor from afar. YouTube, you know, I was just a Thich Nhat fanatic on YouTube, and I got to see him in Vietnam, and it was life-changing. He didn't have to say a word because he wasn't able. He had had a terrible stroke, and he wasn't able to speak. So I was just able to be in his presence. Nothing like it.
And experience the power of silence,
Yes.
as you put it.
Yep. Yeah.
So, your Red Table Talks were famous for...
Okay with us today.
well, so, they were famous for frank conversations, including within the family. So how did you navigate that? The book obviously touches not just on Will, but your children, including Trey, what you call your bonus son, Will's son from his first marriage. And again, something for anybody here who is divorced that I love. You said you realized early on that you could not really love Trey without embracing his mother.
Yeah.
And that's, again, so wise. You had to forgive whatever was there and build the relationship. But back to, how did your family navigate the book? Like, did you show them early drafts? Did they have comments? Did they edit anything out?
Yeah, no, I just sat with the kids. I said, okay, here, these are the stories I want to tell. You good with that? You know what I mean? And they're like, yeah, Mom, that's cool. I was like, all right. I think the most difficult navigation was my mother.
Yes.
Yeah, like, she still, you know, rightfully so, she still has a lot of, like, guilt around some of the experiences we had. So I didn't want to share anything she wasn't comfortable with. That was first and foremost for me. And Will was just like, whatever, go ahead. You know, no, but he was like, you know, I want you to share. He's like, you haven't been able to have your authentic voice through and through. He was like, I'm gonna be comfortable with whatever you want to share. I trust you. And so I was very grateful for that. But he read the book before I gave it to the editor. Yeah, to make sure he was cool.
That's great. And he didn't change anything?
He didn't change a word. He
That's
changed
fantastic.
nothing. He changed nothing. I was really grateful. He really wanted me to have my voice and to have my story. Yeah.
It's again what you say in the book about you felt many times in your life as though you were on somebody else's train.
Yeah.
And that it was hard to get off his train and be on your train.
Yeah.
And now you are very much on your train.
I'm on my train, and I'm really happy because one thing Will has really came to terms with and was very clear, really many years ago. He was like, I get it. You've been on my train. He's like, I get it, you know? And he really wanted me to get on my train. And so that we could kind of hop on each other's train back and forth, you know? But he really understood it was time for me to have my own train.
Was there anything in the writing of the book that you had not anticipated? The book is very revealing, obviously, for anyone reading it, but was there anything revealing for you?
I think my mother and I had a couple of aha moments because I share the stories of my great-grandmother and my grandmother and how their traumas influenced my mother's trauma and my trauma. I got to see on paper how generational trauma works. And my mother was like, I just cannot understand why I had so many problems with self-esteem issues. And I said, do you think it might have been because grandmother really had really unrealistic expectations of you that you could never meet, that you thought you were supposed to meet? She was like, oh, I never thought about that. And we sat down and really worked through that together, because that never even was in her sphere. She just never thought about it like that. But when we looked at it on paper, when my mother got pregnant at 17, and my grandmother was like, you are gonna have this child, told my father, you either marry my daughter, or she's gonna get an abortion, or we're gonna give this baby up for adoption if you don't marry her, right? Because my grandmother got pregnant at 13 years old and had to give her baby up for adoption, and then was given to a foster care family. So she had so much shame around being pregnant as a teenager. So when my mother got pregnant as a teenager, her trauma came up. And my father was abusive. But it was important that her daughter be married. Now, when I got pregnant at 25, my mother immediately, you have to get married. When you hear Jada, you have to get married. And I was like, Ma, just slow up. Just let me think about this. But I got to see how that generational pain, it's like we're not back in the, you know what I mean? This is modern times. I might be able to do something different. But that trauma, and it was so intense. So that was interesting too, to see that line. So I was like, oh, that's what that moment was about. Because what you went through and what my grandmother went through, got it. So then I had understanding around that.
That's one of the questions you ask the reader. Is there any aspect of your life at the moment that stems from inherited trauma cycle?
Yeah.
This generational trauma cycle.
Yeah.
And you also ask the reader if there is any aspect of your life at the moment that reflects an addiction to chaos.
Ooh. Yeah, I'm still trying to detox from that. Yeah.
Because there is a part of us that is addicted to the turbulence.
Yeah, the turbulence, the arousal, always like on the. Yeah, I'm still working on that part.
And just again, one of my favorite lines of questions is, are you still waiting for a savior prince or savior princess in your life who is going to save you? Are you expecting them to make you feel safe and feel cherished? Are you done with that?
I am. I'm done with, well, here's the part I'm done with. Expecting someone to do that for me when I don't want to do that for myself first. Right? What I learned, and it's on the back of this book, a queen is her own savior. Her magic is quiet, potent, and mysterious, right? Is that me coming into my sense of self-worth, I can save myself. And now all my partner needs to do is participate in my happiness, not be my happiness, and not be the one to provide my happiness, but help me enhance it. We're gonna enhance it together. But you can't save me from my misery.
And that's also part of, that's a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yes.
Yeah. It took me a long time to get that one. Damn near 3 decades.
Yes, maybe you can redefine online dating.
Wow. I mean, well, that's the issue. I think we get so caught up in these idealized, romanticized versions of relating. You know, we look to our relationships to just please us. You know, you're here to please me now. Of course, we want to have fun and have pleasing moments, but, you know, to expect somebody to be the pleasure, right? When we don't know how to please ourselves. Yeah.
So actually, I have two. Once you connect with yourself,
Yeah.
then you can connect with someone else without the expectations that they are your savior,
Oh,
they're going to bring you your happiness.
yeah.
So that's one idea. Before we go to the next idea, I want to bring up another theme of the book, which is how to let go of our perfectionism. You actually ask this question: can you let go of your need for things to be perfect before you leave?
Yeah. That's a hard one, right? That's a hard one. Yeah. That was, I mean, even in this part of the journey right now, people are having such a hard time dismantling the idea of this perfect marriage.
Yes, yes.
People are having a really hard time, and I understand,
Yes.
right? Because I was mad too. I was mad too. I was pissed. I was like, man, this is supposed to be like this and this and this. So I understand why everybody else is upset when we run into what's real and we want to believe, no, what's supposed to be this thing, I have to believe that that's true. And it's like, nah, I'm sorry. We out here with the same struggle as y'all got. And it's okay. Thank you. It's okay. And I would really like, if you let me, share with you what I've discovered in all that turbulence, and just show you what I've learned along the way to help me get through, and on the other side to have something that's so much stronger and so much more authentic. Because at the end of the day, don't we want to have relationships with people that somebody can look at you and love you for all that makes you divine and all that doesn't, and everything in between, and love you all the same? Isn't that what we really want? But it takes some work to get there.
I love the preacher in you.
Do you? Do you like it?
Yes, preach, sister, right?
No, she didn't.
There is a lot of poetry in the book. I'm just going to read just one of my more poetic lines that I love, which is how to remove the debris from the wounds of your heart and allow your tears and self-soothing to magically transform it all to gold.
Yeah.
Which is like such alchemy.
Yes.
But it's through pain.